We used to talk about health for all, and that was long ago when we were when some of us were still in school. Today we're talking about universal health coverage. It's the same thing. So there is really nothing new. What is new today is the level of misunderstanding of this term. It is astonishing that people cannot actually understand what UHC is all about. So I want to just add on what the previous speaker was saying, that for a country such as ours, and I'm sure like Kenya and DRC, South Sudan and so on, the most important thing is for all of us to have a common understanding. I think that's where to start. We need to have a common understanding about universal health coverage, health for all. If we do not have the same understanding, then it will be difficult to integrate and to put it in practice in other sectors. Because it is not just about the health sector, as we have just heard. So once we have a common understanding, and the common understanding must include, of course, the population. The population has got to be made aware, and I like the approach that the National Planning Authority has taken, that we must have an awareness program for the population. When we start from building the awareness at the population level, we will then get the politicians, the leaders, to appreciate what universal health coverage is about. And it will be easy then for the different sectors to know what to do. It must really originate from a common understanding nationally. And if I can just talk a bit about Uganda, I don't think that understanding has been achieved. I'm yet to understand from other countries whether they have that same problem. I have just been reading for other reasons, not because of this particular symposium, some of the progress, some of the work that is being done in Nigeria and also in Ghana. These are more or less neighboring countries, but I can assure you the trend and the policies in those two countries are starkly different. Whereas in Ghana, the coverage for national health insurance is about 58% now. The one of Nigeria is about 4%. The levels of understanding in these two countries actually are reflected by those figures. In Ghana, there seems to be a common understanding of what we need to do to have everybody access health care, but also improve health generally for everybody. And that is not the same with Nigeria. And in Uganda here, of course, we are still grappling with how to define, it's already defined, but we are still grappling with understanding universal health care. So I think the basic thing to begin with is to gain that common understanding. Now, we have heard many times, and Professor Maswa is famously quoted for saying that health is not made in health facilities, it's not made in hospitals. Health is made at home. Somebody was saying here, health is made in different places. But I just want to refocus that statement. Health is actually made at home. Health is made at home, and if I can quote Professor Maswa, and then it is repaired. I think he used that word. It is repaired in the hospital. So, the starting point of improving health is the home. And there are a number of things that constitute or that promote or that accelerate and sustain health. And until those things are present and addressed and made available to everybody, we will be having problems with health. And those things fall in different sectors. Of course, government structure is highly artificial, and it is not constant, it is always changing. But somebody must take responsibility for those different aspects that build our health. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me just mention a few. The first one, and I think this is something that the Ministry of Finance, and I'm sure even our president here in Uganda will pat me on the back for. The first thing is that actually health is related to income. Income. Having money with you. It is a great contributor to health. You cannot be healthy when you don't have money. I'm not talking about wealth. I'm talking about income. Income means having cash with you. It has a bearing. There is a common graph which shows just how important having income is to our health, to the health of the household income. So it is number one. And I think the president and everybody else in the Ministry of Finance has been working very hard to improve the health, the income of Ugandans. I don't know how far successful it is. But it is just important to know that a way must be found out to create a certain level of income for households. The second area, and that falls, of course, under different ministries. The planning authority, the guy who has just spoken here, I'm sure they have this in mind when they're talking about health and universal health coverage. I'm not going to go into how this income makes health better, but quickly, one of the things is that it can enable you to reach health services. It can enable you to get the necessary requirements, inputs at home. That is income. The second area is food and nutrition. It is not only the presence or the availability of food, but it is how this food is consumed and in what proportions. So if the food is not available, that's a very big problem. But even when the food is available, you can actually be unhealthy because you have not eaten well in the right balance. A recent study has been done. I think it's in the Lancet. It's still a hot paper. People are still sharing it, even on the social media, which has indicated just how powerful food and nutrition is to longevity, to make people live long and healthy lives. And there were two things that were striking in that study. The eating of certain specific foods was found to be was found to have higher impact. We always know that there are certain things that you need to eat, proteins and fats and so on and so on. But there are certain things that you must eat in constant and good amounts to live longer. And when you don't know these things, it's impossible to generate health in our homes. And this falls entirely in the sector of agriculture, food and nutrition. But of course, then the health sector also comes in to inform us about how nutrition should be managed. So that is nutrition. Then we have primary and secondary education. I'm not talking about university education. I'm talking about primary and secondary education. Studies have shown that universal primary education alone, in other words, for us in Uganda here, just reaching the 7th grade, that is P7, reduces, especially for a girl child. If the girl child just dropped out of P7 without having gone to secondary or other schools, her children will have halved the mortality rate of her children just going to P7. And a study was done to find out exactly why this has happened. The reasons are that by the time the child, a girl child, it doesn't seem to happen with boy child. It happens with a girl child. By the time the girl child finishes P7, she will know about immunization, she will know about nutrition, she will know about hygiene, personal hygiene. She will also know about home hygiene. That is educating children just up to P7. But it is even better when you educate up to senior 4. That is what is in Uganda here called the universal secondary education, up to senior 6 perhaps. It is even better. But unfortunately, that advantage, that benefit, rapidly disappears or levels off after senior 6. So that even if that person goes to university, the advantage is not there at all. There are no advantages. Then we have the area of hygiene. I just talked about hygiene. Hygiene at home, hygiene on the person, individual. At home, there are many elements of hygiene. Keeping clean the places where you sleep, the utensils you use, the homestead, and then of course keeping personally clean and so on. All these are important for health. And that normally falls under a separate sector community development, but also I think it falls under the local government. It also falls under health. And we need to take note of this when we are mainstreaming or allocating roles to different sectors. The other one is water and sanitation. Water and sanitation perhaps contributes about 70 to 80% of all communicable disease problems in our countries. If you don't have good, clean water, and if sanitation is poor, you can be sure that health is going to be a problem. And that falls under the water department. Then we have public participation. Public participation. Studies have also been done. This is a very common study where communities do not participate and express their opinions and their experiences, where such a thing does not happen. Fortunately for us in Uganda, this is very good because we have local councils and we have many spaces where people can express themselves. Where people do not express themselves, it affects their health. Because when you express yourself, you impact on the leaders who take decisions. So public participation is critical. And of course, if this public participation is through democratic processes, it is even better. So having said these things which are outside the hospital, it becomes clear that we must plan for these elements. And there are many others. I've not gone through them, all of them. We must plan for these, what are called the prerequisites for health. We must plan for them in the other sectors. And as the planning authority, people have taken it for themselves, we need to express these elements in the National Development Plan, in each of these sectors, so that a tool which is going to be made, and I hope that tool can capture all these elements, should be able to assess whether this plan is feasible, it is conducive to universal health care. The final part of my presentation is how can we raise resources for universal health care. I think the most important thing is that we have to make a political choice, because universal health coverage is a political choice. If the politicians cannot understand and take a decision on universal health care, then I'm sorry, we really cannot do much. As common people, we cannot do much. The politician must make the decision, and that decision must make universal health care a priority. That's number one. Number two, the political commitment must be very clear, very, very clear, that we are going to fund, we are going to put our resources to ensure that there is universal health care in this country. Political commitment. Number three, the public must be made aware of their role. For example, there are several ways in which you can raise money, raise resources. One of them, the commonest, is through the tax. tax payment of health services, of other services. But there are also ways in which people can contribute. The commonest of them being, of course, the national health insurance. And other ways can also be explored. So all these must be put in practice. And finally, we need to increase and improve household income. Because if you do not improve household income, by all means, by everything that is possible, either through trade, through agriculture, through whatever means, households must have money. In Uganda, in today's economy, in today's modern world, households must have money. And that's when it will be easier for us to raise the necessary resources. Thank you very much.